Dear audience, Assalamu alaikum and a very beautiful afternoon. Next Generation Professional Development and Solutions, as the name suggests, works to offer training and professional development solutions in academic and corporate spheres. NGPDS advocates spreading the vibes of awareness and responsibility. This webinar series is dedicated to professional development of teachers. We bring to the spotlight topics which usually get ignored, they're undermined in the programs related to teacher education and teacher training. One such topic was teacher identity and agency. In fact, we chose that topic to open the NGPDS Vibes, this webinar series. Another such topic is classroom communication. And classroom communication is the aspect of pedagogy which is usually indirectly referred to or is merged with the other topics. Through our today's discussion, we highlight the importance of effective classroom communication in learning outcomes of the students. And our discussion will be relevant to the teachers of all levels, pedagogy as well as andragogy. So dear audience, when we look at the research literature, we find most of them focused on classroom routine and interactional patterns. To determine or analyze the speech act functions of instructional discourse. Such studies analyze teachers' speech act functions such as elicitation and acknowledgement, and the influence of such speech acts on the quality and length of student responses and student replies. However, this is not the purpose of our today's discussion. The purpose is rather to highlight the importance of effective classroom communication in learners' academic achievement, to understand the role of classroom communication in behavior modification and learners' social and emotional learning. We also know it as SEL. Another purpose is to emphasize the need for trainers and training institutes to include this topic, classroom communication, in teacher training programs also. And all that we'll do through showcasing the real voices of real people working in this domain. I'll talk a little more on classroom communication, that learning environment of a classroom and the relationship between teachers and students both depend on the quality of classroom communication. And by classroom communication, we mean the language that teachers and students use to interact with each other and to exchange information. However, it's pertinent to mention that most of our routine lessons in the pedagogical context of Pakistan are dominantly teacher-fronted. Teacher talk time is much more than student talk time. And such communication may be written, may be spoken during and for instruction, or it may be informal, taking place outside the classroom and not strictly related to the instructional content. It may be related to the students' other issues, their other areas of concern. So we'll discuss with our guests the importance and impact of classroom communication in face-to-face classes, virtual atmosphere, and with the use of educational technology. So without further delay, I would introduce the experts at the panel today. We have Dr. Kishore Sultana, a lecturer at Otago Polytechnic, Auckland International Campus in New Zealand. Next, we have Dr. Samia Naz. She is course coordinator at Quaid-e-Azam Academy for Educational Development, Punjab. And our third speaker is Dr. Sadia Rashad, who is an assistant professor at the Department of English, Air University, Islamabad. So I would come straight to our first question, which is what is the difference between classroom communication and classroom discourse, as I gave a hint towards what the studies are mainly about, the researches are mainly about, but what do we actually mean by classroom communication? And for that, I would request Dr. Samia to give us her views on the difference between classroom discourse and classroom communication. Please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shagufta. Before I start talking about that, I want to share that I'll be talking about my personal experience as a course coordinator, as a teacher, because I have experience of teaching also, as a teacher trainer also. So as we know that classroom communication, it's like that is like teaching and learning, is a communicative process. So in this process, teachers and students, they communicate with each other. So similarly, the students and students also communicate with each other. That is peer learning or peer communication. So for me, classroom communication, or the teacher-student talk or communication, and student-student communication, that affects the instructions or instructional discourse. So it means that both run at parallel. As far as classroom communication is concerned, it depends more on the teacher's approach, teacher's philosophy behind the classroom communication. What do, as a teacher, I believe is the classroom communication? For example, as if I am a traditional teacher, I'll be taking the class as with a traditional approach, and that will be a teacher talk. Teacher talk time is more in traditional approach in the or traditional classroom. Whereas if I believe that the student-centered approach should be followed in the classroom, so the students will be given more importance and more value. So following both approaches, if we see that in both approaches, it depends on the teacher's approach, and then the instructions also depend on that approach. Like in the traditional teaching approach, the teacher gives definitely the direct instructions to the students in the classroom. Whereas in the students, following the student-centered approach, the teacher uses interactive instruction, an environment where the students are given chance to speak, to share, they are given a chance to explain. So it depends on the methodology of the teacher. So I would say that it not only, if we say that how it affects the classroom communication and how it makes the classroom more effective. So it not only affects the students' learning, but it also affects the students' behavior. So whatever it is, it depends more on the teacher's teaching methodology, how she behaves in the classroom, how she deals with the students. So there are definitely some set of norms and rules that the teacher follows to, if we talk about the student-centered approach, following that, the teacher follows some norms and rules in the classroom to make it more interactive. And she creates an environment where the students feel valued, they are motivated, they want to speak, they want to say something, they feel that there is a caring attitude, and the teacher is not only a person who is teaching them, but the teacher's role is that of a facilitator. So it means that teacher's role counts a lot. So then the teacher focuses on classroom communication and cooperation, collaboration in the classroom. So it means that if the teacher knows the 21st century skills, if she knows that critical thinking skills are important, if she knows that communication and imagination and creativity is important in the classroom, how to engage the students in the classroom, how to develop their critical thinking skills in the classroom. So she will adopt different strategies, and her instructional discourse will be different. But if she is a traditional teacher, her instructional discourse will be different.
Dr. Samia, and with this, I'll connect actually that does classroom communication by teacher impact student learning only, or does it have any impact on their social, emotional learning as well? In other words, does it impact the students' attitude and behaviors too? And for that, may I request Dr. Kishore Sultana to share her views on it?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Shagufta. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So coming back to your question, so yeah, definitely it is, because as we see the process of communication as a whole, it's like a very rounded term, which can include like an umbrella term, which can include lots of other skills, which can be termed and addressed in the classroom setting. And like the communication, as we see, is a two-way process. It's not one. So it's how the teacher behaves, how the teacher acts, how the teacher communicates, affects the students in each and every way. On their emotional learning, as you mentioned, Dr. Shagufta, as well, the SEL, the social and emotional learning component in the class. And yes, especially in the context of classroom communication, what I believe is linking it to your social and emotional component, or the student's behavior. As a teacher as well, and as a teacher trainer as well, I believe, and especially nowadays, in nowadays setting, post-COVID and virtual classes and online classes, I believe the component of empathy is very, very important. Because like we talk about all of the professional settings and all of the terms, what can we use? But I believe, like, among all of the things that, like, what teachers should be doing, what they should be doing, they should have flexibility, they should use visual, they should use this and that. But in that list, I put empathy at the top, because once you develop a connection with the students, like you show empathy, and the students have that level of comfort with you, then I think it's very, very easy to achieve the outcomes, whatever we are trying to achieve through that communication. So it does affect their emotional and social learning. In my own experiences as well, like I teach a lot of international students as well, and then they come from different parts of the world, and they can be set in one classroom, and then they can have cultural differences as well. So how, like, the way, like, in my own experience, I connect with them, and then I just put myself in their shoes. Like, that's what empathy is. Like, I put myself in their shoes, and then try to feel how would they feel in that environment, and especially in that, if they're in a foreign language class or in an academic setting class, then they have different barriers. So first, if they feel that connection with their teacher, I think they are at the level of comfort that they can start that process. They want to participate. They are willing to participate in that process of learning and then communicating. So I think I believe this is, like, really important, and it does affect their behaviors and their attitudes. And this way, I think they would learn really easily, or they will be at the level of comfort.
Response from Dr. Sadia Arshad, because I see her online.
We often easily say no, but and when the learner is responding correct, we often see that we say okay, fine, but we don't encourage them. So encouraging learners is very much important. It would keep them motivated. It would keep them interested for learning. It would keep them engaged, and it would remove the fear and inhibition of taking part in the classroom, and it would establish a sort of a positive relationship between the teacher and the learner. I hope these points would help all of us, and they would help the teachers too. Thank you.
That learning is actually a social activity. And along with understanding the content, the teachers and students, they need to understand each other's too. Classroom community in which feelings of belongingness, empathy, acceptance, they become very important. And now that we talk about the globalization, we talk about the international students and international learners in one group. We also talk about the individual differences. A sense of inclusion, a sense of empathy is something which is very important. And but with all those differences, a question that is coming to my mind is, what is the role of classroom communication in classroom management? When we talk about inclusion, we talk about globalization, we talk about empathizing with these students. There come differences in the behaviors as well. And most of the time, the teachers, they're struggling with the behavior modification of the learners. So how classroom communication may be linked with classroom management. By classroom management, I definitely mean, the conditions, the available conditions which promote learning. And, like I said, that is one of the trickiest part of the teacher's job, to handle disruptive behavior of the students. And there are learners who are not motivated enough to sit for hours to study. There would be students who will just not let you complete the lesson the way you had planned it. So classroom management is very important when it comes of learning atmosphere and use of skilled approach in providing the feedback, for example. To my understanding, providing a positive feedback and in-time feedback may help the teachers managing their classes very well. With my 2 decades of experience in teacher training, I've found really this area to be difficult for the teachers to understand and to prepare. When they prepare their lesson plans, when they prepare the content, when they prepare the activities, there are only few teachers who really pay attention to how will they be managing their class with the help of the communication. So that is where we would like to know a little more about how can communication help teachers overcome the in-class impediments of learning, such as poor attitude, fractured relationship between teachers and students and among the students themselves.
I think it's very important. I think what I like, some of the tricks I keep on my sleeves as well is like sometimes especially like when I'm teaching online. So I think sometimes how to it's related with motivation as well, the area that how, because if students are like not participating enough, and how can we motivate them, like through our better classroom communication, some strategies. What I would say is like use of visuals really help as well, because we have to keep in mind the different learning styles. Sometimes like what we interpret like students as having a struggling or unmotivated behavior, maybe they are unable to learn really well, or maybe they have there can be some sort of like, I think there is one more area as well, which is like learning difficulties people have or learning disabilities people have. So I think keeping in mind the learning style, if the students have visual learners, so or auditory or verbal, or there can be all these different ones. So I think we can keep that thing in our mind as their audience, and then we can use as many visuals as we can in our lessons, even if it even works better when it's our online classes, and especially as you mentioned about the feedback as well. So I believe less is more, and then I always recycle the materials in my classrooms, whatever they have used, if they have used something for their listening or their reading, and if I ask them to write something about that, and I would use their own writing sort of as a feedback session in their class, and I would share my screen. So it's more about like collaborating as well. So I would share my screen, and then the students can see it, and then I can involve them. I can ask them, like, even it can be about, the feedback can be about different things, about their grammar lesson, or about a sort of content, or about sort of paraphrasing or something, depending on what skill is it we are like addressing.
Well, thank you. So involvement is the key. I would pick the word involvement. The teacher has to be really mindful of involving all different sort of students with some sort of shortcomings or with some brighter aspects. They all need to be accommodated. And Dr. Samia, here I would like to have your opinion on, because you have been linked with teacher training. So how much do you think our teacher training programs really focus on this aspect of of pedagogy, classroom communication? I would like to know more from you.
I have also been teaching in the rural areas. So I'll share my practical experience first, and then I'll talk about the teacher training experience. Actually, in the rural areas where the female students particularly, they feel hesitation. They don't share with the teacher, even if they know the answer of the questions, even if they want to discuss something, they want to be participative. They are shy, and they don't, they don't sit even in front of the classroom. So there are some such sort of issues which the teacher needs to handle. So coming to the teacher training, we share with our teachers that when you are in the classroom, there are two things. One is the teacher's rules, and another thing is the teacher's rules. So teachers' rules it's okay. You set some rules, but role is very important, because it's you who have to engage all the students. It's you who have to make all the students participative in the classroom. Either they are shy or they know something. They feel that they may be saying something which may not be given much value. So it's very important that the teacher knows how to deal with all of the students, to understand individual differences of the students. As Dr. Dr. Kishwar said, that there are different learning styles, so the teacher should understand the learning styles. Then, particularly in rural areas, it's very important that the teacher builds rapport with the students, and not only with the students but also with their family, because then she knows that what are the issues, psychological or social or emotional, strengths of the students, and also areas where they need help. And then if we talk about the rules, teachers' rules, it's important that the teacher should be consistent, herself should be consistent in her behavior, how she behaves with all students. If she is behaving equally, then with all the students in all situations. So I think teacher's role is very important, that we not only we give some sessions on that, but also during all the sessions, particularly in social ethics session, we touch some areas, similar areas where the teachers know how to behave in the classroom, because it's not only the students' behavior, but the teacher's behavior also, teacher's attitude also, that matters.
Thank you, Dr. Samia. And I believe it's very important when you talk about the involvement of the parents. This is one area which has always remained, very, very close to my heart. That whenever we talk about pedagogy, we always look at the student and the teacher. And to say in the triangle, we say they are parents, but practically, do we really take them in the loop? At least in the context of Pakistan, we find it very difficult. And it's something which is, I would say, at majority of the places and schools, I would say educational institutions is missing. While when we talk about the purpose of the education or the outcomes of the education, any kind of education at any level is to bring a positive change in the knowledge, skills, and behaviors. And I have seen, again, throughout my career, that it's the knowledge that we focus more on, and then some of the skills. But behavior is something which gets missed, and behavior is something which is so closely rooted back in the families, rooted back in that socioeconomic setup, that the teachers really, really need to be aware of.
I would like to add here, I think it's this area is like ignored in like our culture, but it's like internationally, like there is a separate department for this pastoral care. So that's what they do. Like there are people who are assigned these roles. Teacher can also act like as a person who can provide pastoral care, but there are like other departments as well who do that, so that the students, they should like really understand what's going on behind the scenes. And then also, I would also, as Dr. Samia mentioned about that, this is like very typical in our, especially in Pakistan, in our areas as well, that she was mentioning about. I really like that example about the girls who were shy, like they knew the answer, but they were shy. So I think at this stage, it's crucial that, for example, when the teacher is planning the lesson or whatever technologies they have, how can they get that answer? How can they elicit that information? Because in our setting, people say that, okay, when we are getting the answer, the verbal answer, students replied, okay, that's a bright student, and then they get it. But then there are many, the teacher should be mindful that there are many other ways of eliciting that information. That can be in the form of like, when people have different styles, like introvert or extrovert, or different learning styles they have, they can answer that question in different ways. They can write it. For example, in online setting, the students can write the answer in the chat window when they can't speak it. So that's, they're participating, they're involving, even if they're shy or they're introvert.
That's true. So, that is where I believe the teacher training comes to play its role. And I've seen, because we do not have enough time to, the schools, they do have the teacher training program, but usually the time is so limited that the priority is something like the, lesson planning. The priority is more like how to really assess these students, how to design a good question paper, and, things like that. And that's why when I, right in the beginning, when I said that it's the classroom communication separately is an area which usually is missing in our training programs. I sifted through, like I headed this training institute at national level for 7 years. And I know I always had to make an extra effort to really convince the teachers that this is very important topic and they have to really, really focus on classroom communication. Why? Because classroom communication is so directly linked with the classroom management, with eliciting questions, the responses from the students, and then really focusing on the learning outcomes. So keeping that in mind, I would link it with our next question, which is the teacher's ability to really get those responses and to involve the students. And here, I would particularly focus on involving these students through quality questions. What kind of questions are being asked in the classroom? And that really is directly linked with classroom communication, in which the teacher, the quality of the question and the type of the question is able to determine the teacher talk time more, the ratio of the teacher talk time, or the student talk time, depending on whether it's the critical thinking type of question, whether it's the open-ended question or closed-ended question, So the quality of the questions really is very important. Dr. Samia, I would like you to elaborate more on it.
Thank you. Actually, if I talk about the school education department, the teachers who are teaching there, the teachers who are teaching in primary, elementary, secondary, and higher secondary level. What is the approach of the teacher is that they prepare the classroom questions which they ask during their lessons. The preparation of the questions, the choice of the questions depends more on the final examinations, the type of questions which are asked in the final examination. For example, if we talk about the PEC exam, Punjab Examination Commission. Now, Punjab Examination Commission does not take any tests. They give some items to the teachers and ask them to choose the items and give it to the students. Previously, there was a practice that they gave the teachers items. I mean, the practice was same, but at that time, it was considered that this is a questionnaire. This is an examination. So the teacher's choice of questions now is that depends on the PEC examination or the items which are given by Punjab Examination Commission.
I really appreciate that you highlighted this. However, here the role of questions was with reference to the examination. And that is something that we at length will be discussing sometime later as well, because that's also very important. However, we believe even when we talk about the Bloom's taxonomy and its levels and how do we design our questions based on all these levels, and especially the top tiers, I still would come back to the classroom communication, that how important it is, even during the classroom when the teachers ask different questions, to involve the students. We were talking about involvement of the students in classroom discussion, and we started with the ratio of teacher talk time as compared to the student talk time. So to ensure the students more communication and more participation, the teachers have to be skilled enough to get more information from the students by asking those smart questions, by asking open-ended questions. And that is where we really need to tell our teachers, we need to train our teachers in the area of asking questions, not only for examination, not only for assessment, but also in their day-to-day classroom communication, what sort of questions need to be asked. So that was our focus. And Dr. Kishore, I see maybe you would like to add something to it?
Yeah, so I believe that, like, when we're talking about question, I would just say here that the role of experiential learning is really like highlighted, because, like, let me define what experiential learning is for our audiences. That how the experiential learning is when learners learn by experiencing something, or they just reflect on and learn something by doing, reflecting and doing and acting, or we can say a sort of cyclical learning or task-based learning. So here when we ask them questions, I think it's really important that we should give them some time to reflect as well, because that's how they learn. And then by doing so how can we do? We cannot just like ask them question and give them like and open-ended time to reflect. So here we can bring in peer learning, or the student to student talk time, that how can we divide them in pair or in groups and give them question to think, and then come up and discuss with each other and come up with answers. And this way we can check their understanding. Even if they have different sort of answers, they can have a discussion. And this can also, like, as we were talking about the discourse or the communication, that how can we make it more effective? So even in online setting, we have ways to do it. We can use breakout rooms, and we can put students in 2, 3, 4 different breakout rooms. That's what I do as well, that we can ask them questions and we can give them some time. So as I was talking about different applications and different learning management systems as well. So that's what we do. So because to reduce that TTT, triple T, teacher talk time, it's really important that we involve the other learners with each other as well. So when we talk about communication in classroom communication, the student-teacher communication, and then the student, they should talk about, because it's a very great opportunity for them to connect with each other, and then to learn from each other. The peer learning is a very important concept. And as Dr. Samia has also mentioned, that we have the role of a facilitator. So just stepping away from that role that teacher used to have, now it's like more of a facilitator. We are facilitating your learning, students. So that's what it's very important when we are training the new teachers, and then when we are also teaching in our classrooms, to give that time to connect, to socialize, to discuss, and to talk about their learning and reflect on it, and then come back and express it. So I think it's really, really important.
So it's all about motivating them to talk more, giving them time to express themselves, and that expression is very, very important. And that could be through questions, that could be through some prompts, that could be through through some demos, could be through group work, it could be any mode. But again, it's the teacher's skill. That is what is really demanded here. Dr. Kishore, you have been handling the face-to-face classes. Now that you're handling the virtual classes as well. But then there comes another aspect of technology, and that is the use of educational technology. A very interesting observation is pre-COVID scenario is that we used to encourage our teachers to use technology, to use certain apps, to use really those educational apps to design the activities to involve the students. And we could see that there was some sort of innovation or some sort of fear of technology. And I would say blessing is in disguise. The COVID impact on the teaching, I have seen it has really changed the teaching culture. And the teachers who were very, very reluctant in using the online media or using different learning apps, they really have, they find it very easy and very interesting now to design the online material, online classes, online activities, and using that technology. So, that's very interesting. However, I will get your views also on it, but also with the help of educational technology, the change of, or the impact of educational technology on classroom communication, where the teacher doesn't have to explain everything themselves. They can use the PowerPoint, they can use audio, they can use videos, they can use certain simulations. And how does that consume the time, and does it really give them enough time Could it be a solution for encouraging more student participation?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how the things changed like seamlessly. I think it's sort of, as you mentioned, the blessing in disguise, and necessity is the mother of invention as well.
True.
That how people, they wanted to be more effective, and then they came up with so many different solutions. I really love to be in the online classes, and because I learned so much by just coming up with different things. And probably what I would say my takeaway from here is that try to keep things simple, because there is a plethora of apps and things which we can use, but we shouldn't be like deviating from the first thing, like we are facilitating learning, okay? And we can use some of those apps, and I would say that keep it simple. For example, I would give my personal one example here, that in the beginning when I was using, as I said, that we should use more and more, especially even in the classroom, virtual classrooms, online classroom, blended classrooms, or flipped classrooms. There's so many of these. So we should use more visuals, because like students are not face to face. So that's one thing. And then if while we're talking and while we are showing them visual does not mean that there's like a picture every time. So for example, if I'm talking to students, I would open collaborative whiteboard, right? And on that collaborative whiteboard, I would write notes. I would use it as my whiteboard in the classroom, so that I can just write some important words and phrases, so that students are there listening to me as well, and they're understanding me as well. But then what I found with that online collaborative whiteboard, there was sort of a delay in real time. So, and then I thought, okay, I should experiment with something else. And then what I did was I was sharing my screen, and I started using Word file, just the plain simple Word file. And what I realized, that there wasn't any delay while I was typing and doing something, while I was typing my notes and like in front of the students, using it as a whiteboard. So I really liked that. And then I just like saved the Word file on my desktop, and I just named it whiteboard. So that's my whiteboard I use in my classes. And I thought it was the function of that Word file was way better than the collaborative whiteboard I could use online, because it was in the browser, it was an online version. So you learn a lot while you do different things. So it was simple and nice and efficient, and I would just add my responses. Sometimes when I want students to give their responses as well, which we can use in a notepad or a collaborative whiteboard, I would just ask them to write their responses in the chat window as well in Teams. So this was way quicker than the collaborative whiteboard. So I think it's the goal or the task should be keeping things simple and efficient, so that we manage things in less time, and they're efficient, and everybody's involved, and at the end of the day we are achieving those learning outcomes as well.
Yeah,
it's really important.
Yeah, it's very nicely explained that, you know, when it comes to technology, and we just said that the teachers, they have really started feeling very comfortable with technology, and there are lots of experimentation going on with different apps and with different tools. It's always important to keep that balance and to see what saves your time, because eventually it's the impact of your communication and the students' communication on the learning outcome, and not what was actually displayed and how with the use of what technology it was displayed. If you really can achieve, you know, achieving the most with the least, perhaps that should be the purpose. How to keep it simple, how not to always experiment with different apps and tools, you know, very often not to confuse the learners as well. So that's very important. That when we use educational technology, we have to really keep it balanced, and we have to keep it to the point, and we have to see whether it really helps us in achieving our outcomes. Dr. Samia, again, I would come back to the teacher training programs. That how important do you think, when we talk about the teacher training, whether it's the teacher education, whether it is the in-service training programs, where we talk about the classroom management, where we talk about the lesson planning, we talk about the assessment tools. However, we always have less time to train our teachers. That is one universal fact that at least we have. We have less resources, we have less time. We are always afraid of losing that time for the training, actually taking that time out of the timetable. And, the fear is most of the time that we'd be losing that time, while it is that when your teachers are more skilled, they learn to save time, they learn to do things more efficiently. And how important do you think is, Dr. Samia, that we include the topic like classroom management, classroom communication separately in our training modules, especially the in-service training programs?
I really appreciate this topic because usually we talk about classroom management, we talk about communication and presentation skills of the teacher, but we don't talk about the classroom communication. Though we talk about lesson planning, how the teacher involves the students, how does she engage the students, we talk about activity-based teaching. Definitely when this theme or topic is being touched there, because we have multi-grade teaching. Our teachers are teaching to hundreds, students in the classroom, where the number of the students is 100 and more than 100. Sometimes they are 60, and sometimes they are of different age groups. Sometimes they are of different, they are teaching different subjects at the same time. So it's really very important to touch this particular theme when we train our teachers. And though we are talking about multi-grade teaching, we are talking about how to give feedback, constructive feedback to the students. So yes, I agree with you that classroom communication is very important, particularly where we have a teacher who is teaching overcrowded classroom.
Thank you very much. And I see Dr. Sadia finally being active there. I hope we can hear her now towards the end of it. The problem persists. So, but due to the limitation of the time, what we would do, we definitely would have your views separately as well, Dr. Sadia, but thank you very much for your patience and for being with us with all these technical glitches. But that is what happens. We at least had your presence, and we'll benefit from your views sometime later as well. So if I must conclude, I know the time, we have really reached that time limit, and it's a time that I conclude the points, and I'll try to conclude all those beautiful and valuable points made by the speakers. I might forget some, but I'll try to sum up all these things. So at the end of this session, dear audience, dear teachers, I concluded by saying that communication in classroom is usually considered to be a tool for transmitting the knowledge and skills. However, it is much more than that. We really can utilize the classroom communication to maintain a two-way relationship between teacher and students, and among the students themselves as well. It is most effective when the classroom communication is informed by mutual understanding, respect. It is guided by teachers, and it is focused on the learning outcomes. We talked about the importance of teacher-student and student relationships, and we looked at how new technological tools can be utilized to have a better classroom communication. But the key here is to create a balance between the dissemination of the content and also the use of technology. Effective communication may also, it can very deeply impact the learning, the quality of the learning. So in other words, if I must say, if your classroom communication is effective, then the student learning may be brought from surface learning to the deeper learning if they're involved better. And for that, again, the teacher's skill in involving the students through communication is very important. We also talked about for the teachers to have effective classroom communication, it is important that they are aware of the student background, and that is where the role of parental involvement comes in. Like Dr. Kishore said, that we may call it pastoral care as well. In other words, I would say that it's mentoring is also it will play a very effective role only when you really know what are the ground realities, what is really resulting into a particular kind of behavior among students, and to understand that the root causes of those. Yes, and we also talked about, yes, the effectiveness of the classroom communication depends on the teacher's own approach or their own understanding towards teachers' rules and teachers' role in the classroom. And this determines the methodologies that the teachers use to establish a good ratio of teacher talk time and student talk time. It also is important that the teachers, they exercise the skills like empathizing, facilitating, and involving the critical thinking skills. And it's very important here that, when we talk about empathizing, we do talk about empathizing a lot. I've seen during the years of my teaching and training that we talk about the concept as, a lot about this concept. And we also talk about empathizing in the corporate sector a lot. But a big difference that I've seen between the teaching profession and the other corporate industry is empathizing as a skill. You really need to train the teachers on empathizing as a skill as well, because it's not just the word, it's not just a phrase, putting yourself into others' shoes. It's something more technical, it's something more practical, in which you really have to be good at developing empathy maps. You really need to be good at empathizing as a skill. And that, again, I believe is where our teacher training institutes and our teacher training programs need to look at how to bring or how to incorporate those empathizing skills among our teachers. So classroom communication is an umbrella term. We made it different from classroom discourse. Today we didn't want to talk about the impact of different speech acts in the classroom discourse, which are related to the instructional discourse. We wanted to talk about the formal communication or informal communication by the teacher and with the students and among the students themselves. And we conclude that, yes, it's very important. We as teachers, many a times we understand if we are good at communication, we are good at classroom communication skills as well. No, that's a skill. That's a pure professional skill. And we really need to learn better about it. We need to learn deeper about it, because many a times our informal communication would be transforming behaviors of the learners. They might be of any age group. They might be children, they might be the college and university students, they might be adult learners, but they learn. I've seen our learners, they learn more from what you don't teach them. I know I'm telling something very strange, but that's the behavior. That's the teacher behavior, which reflects in teacher communication, which determines the classroom atmosphere, which determines the classroom communication, and it determines the learning atmosphere of that classroom. So at the end, I must again thank the respected speakers. I especially thank Dr. Kishore Sultana for being with us when it's midnight there in New Zealand. Thank you very much for being there. And Dr. Samya, thank you very much for sparing time and for sharing your valuable thoughts. Dr. Sadia, we definitely missed hearing from you. And dear audience, thank you very much for being with us. Those who were with us, we'll be sharing the video of this session in a week's time, and it will be available at our Facebook page, at our website as well. And we would like to have your comments and your feedback.